There's a rule they tell you on the first day before they hand you the keys to the tower. It's not written anywhere. It's not in the manual. They tell it to you like a joke. If you hear someone calling your name, don't answer. They laugh when they say it. You're supposed to laugh too. I didn't, because the man who trained me didn't smile when he said it. He was older than the tower itself looked, sun-bleached and quiet in a way that made silence feel intentional. People get lonely up there, he added. Loneliness makes sound do weird things. Then he paused. And sometimes the sound isn't the lonely part. That was all the explanation I got. The tower sat on a spine of rock overlooking miles of desert and pine forest, high enough that clouds passed below eye level. No cell signal, no internet. One dirt road in, one out. During fire season, you didn't leave unless you were relieved or evacuated. I was scheduled for 28 days. Alone? My job was simple. Watch for smoke, log weather, report anything unusual over the radio. The tower had power, water tanks, food drops every 2 weeks, and a radio that worked when the wind wasn't angry. The first 3 days were perfect. Quiet in the good way. The kind that lets your thoughts stretch out. I learned the sounds fast. Wind through dead branches, rocks shifting with heat, birds that screamed like people if you weren't ready for it. By day 4, I stopped flinching. That's when I heard the voice. It came from the canyon below the tower, clear, human, close enough to carry shape. Hey! I froze. That wasn't wind. That wasn't an animal. That wasn't echo. It was a man's voice, out of breath, strained. Hello? Anyone up there? My first instinct was relief. Someone lost. Someone stupid. Someone real. I stepped onto the catwalk and leaned over the railing. Yeah! I called back before I remembered the rule. The voice stopped, not faded. Stopped. I waited. The canyon swallowed sound fast, but not like that. Even a shout leaves something behind. A tail. A bounce. This left nothing. Hello? I tried again. Still nothing. I grabbed my binoculars and scanned the canyon floor. No movement, no dust, no flash of color, just stone, shadow, and scrub. I radioed it in anyway, logged it as a possible hiker. The base acknowledged, told me to keep watch. That night, the wind died completely. No insects, no birds, no trees moving. Silence pressed in so hard my ears rang. Then, from directly beneath the tower, I heard footsteps, slow, bare, walking in a circle around the base. I didn't look down. I remembered the rule too late, and when the voice finally came again, closer now, softer, it said my name perfectly. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the chair by the window with the rifle across my knees and the radio turned low, listening to the mountain breathe. Every hour I told myself I'd imagined it. Every hour the memory sharpened instead of fading. Footsteps don't circle a tower. There's nothing to walk on. At dawn I finally leaned out and looked straight down. Bare rock. A sheer drop for the first 30 feet before the slope even begins. No ledge, no path. No place for a person to stand, let alone walk. The prints were still there. Not on the rock, on the dust in the air. That's the only way I can describe it. A faint disturbance, like something had brushed against the morning mist, leaving a human-sized outline where fog refused to settle. It hung there for seconds, then dissolved. I logged nothing. You don't report things you can't explain with nouns. The radio crackled mid-morning. Tower 12, check-in, bass voice. Normal, I answered. Gave weather, visibility, wind. My voice sounded wrong to my own ears. Too careful, like I was stepping around words. After the call ended, the radio stayed warm. Then it clicked. Same frequency. Same tone. My voice came back through the speaker. Tower 12, do you read? I didn't touch the mic. My own voice repeated the call again, slightly slower this time. I shut the radio off. The silence returned so fast it felt intentional. Around noon, I heard it again. The man's voice, not from the canyon, from the sky. Directly above the tower, as if someone was standing on air, leaning over the roof. I can see smoke from up here, it said. My hands went cold. Lookout towers are built so you can see everything. There's nothing above you except birds and weather. I can help you, the voice continued. Just tell me where to stand. I pressed my back to the wall and kept my mouth shut. Minutes passed. Then the voice sighed. It sounded disappointed. That night, the temperature dropped fast. Wind came in hard, carrying smells it shouldn't. Wet fur, iron, rot warmed by sun. From the tree line far below, something howled. It tried to be a coyote. It tried again. Each attempt got closer to human pain. I watched through binoculars as a shape moved between trees, too tall, bending wrong, pausing to listen whenever I shifted my weight. It never crossed into open ground. Instead, it spoke again. From the radio, from the door, from inside my own head. I don't know how you walk up there, it said softly. The ground hates me. I finally understood. It wasn't asking where to stand. It was asking to be told. The radio died at 2:17 a.m. Not faded. Not crackled. Dead. The small green light went dark like it had been unplugged from reality itself. I tried every backup. Main power. Battery pack. Handset. Nothing. The tower was suddenly smaller, quieter, too exposed. Radios don't just fail up here, not all at once. When technology fails in the wilderness, you assume weather. When weather isn't moving, you assume intent. I sat still, counting my breaths, reminding myself of the rules. Don't respond. Don't confirm. Don't give it a shape. That's when the knocking started. Not on the door, on the support beams beneath the tower. Slow, careful, like fingers testing bone. Wood creaked as weight shifted where weight shouldn't exist. I looked down through the floor slats. Nothing. Then something spoke from directly underneath me. Is this where you stand to watch? The voice was closer now. Not shouted. Not echoing, conversational. I tried the rocks, it continued. They won't take me. But this thing you built, it listens. The metal ladder on the side of the tower rattled. One rung. Then another. I grabbed the rifle and aimed at the trap door. Don't, the voice said gently. My finger froze. I don't know what scares you yet, it went on. But I will. The ladder stopped shaking. Silence stretched. Then footsteps again, moving away this time, circling, learning. I didn't sleep. At sunrise, I found the first mark on the door. Not a scratch, a handprint, too large. Fingers too long, pressed flat like someone had leaned in, curious. The wood beneath it had darkened, as if bruised. I wiped it with my sleeve. The stain stayed. Around noon, I heard a woman crying from the ravine, real crying, broken, hoarse. I fell, she sobbed. I can't get up. I almost answered. That was the worst part. It sounded right. The cadence, the breath between sobs, the way fear pulls words apart. But then she said my name. She said it wrong, too carefully, like reading it off something. I backed away from the door. The crying stopped. Then came applause. Slow, mocking. You notice more now, it said. Good. That means you'll last longer. Something scraped along the tower wall. Not claws. Fingernails, learning grain. I don't need you to open the door, it whispered. I just need you to tell me it's possible. The sun dipped behind the ridge. Shadows stretched too far, and from the forest below more voices joined in, men, women, children, all calling from places no mouth could reach, all waiting for the same thing. By the fifth night, I stopped pretending the tower was protection. It was elevation, visibility, a perch. Nothing more. Whatever was outside didn't need to get in yet. It just needed me to stay put long enough to make a mistake. The voices started rotating. That's the only word for it. One night it was a man, calm and authoritative, calling up from the trees like a ranger who knew exactly what he was doing. Fires jumped the ridge, he said. You need to come down. Protocol. Another night it was a teenager, breathless, panicked, pretending not to know where he was. I can see your light, he cried. Please don't turn it off. Sometimes it didn't speak at all. It just walked around the base, up the ladder halfway, away again, never rushing, never testing the door directly, like it was waiting for me to decide when the encounter happened. On the sixth morning, I tried to leave. I packed light, water, flare gun, map, rifle. I didn't announce it, didn't think about it. I moved like an animal, quiet and automatic. The moment my boots hit the ladder, the forest exploded with sound, every voice at once, screaming, laughing, begging, ordering. The ladder shook violently, metal rattling like it was being struck from below. I climbed back up and slammed the trapdoor shut. Silence returned instantly. That was the message. You leave when I say? I checked the road through binoculars. Gone. Not blocked. Gone. Where the dirt track should have been, there was uninterrupted scrub and stone, like it had never existed. No tire marks. No cut through the brush. The land had closed over it. That afternoon the smell started, blood, old and sweet, mixed with wet fur and something burned. I found more marks on the tower, not handprints this time. Measurements, scratches at shoulder height, at head height, at the height of someone crouching. It was learning scale. At dusk it spoke from the doorway, not outside, from the door itself. "You're doing very well," it said. "Most of them don't last this long." I aimed the rifle at the wood. "What are you?" I asked before I could stop myself. The tower creaked, settling its weight. "I'm what answers when people get lost out here," it replied. I just stopped pretending to be kind about it. The door flexed, not opening, breathing. "You keep looking for rules," it continued. "So here's one." The voice lowered, closer to my own. "If you open the door, I can hurt you." My blood ran cold. "If you don't," it went on, almost pleased, "I can hurt everything else." That night, the forest burned without fire. Trees blackened from the inside. Animals ran screaming past the tower, fleeing something they couldn't see. The wind carried ash that wasn't ash. I watched the world punish itself around me, and I understood the real trap. The tower wasn't a cage, it was a choice. I didn't open the door that matters, because if I had, this would be a shorter story. I stayed inside while the mountains suffered. The night turned the color of bruised metal. Wind pushed smoke that wasn't smoke through the trees, and every animal's sound warped into something wrong before cutting off entirely. Birds fell silent first, then insects, then even the wind seemed to avoid certain directions. The thing outside never touched the tower. It didn't need to. It had found something better than force, leverage. Just before midnight, the voices changed again. No longer random, no longer strangers. It started using people I knew. My father's voice came from the tree line, steady and tired in the way it always was when he tried not to worry. "You can't just hide up there," he said. "That's not who you are." My hands shook so badly I had to sit down. Then my sister, laughing softly, like she used to when she wanted something. "They're going to get hurt if you don't help," she said. "You're the only one who can see." I pressed my palms over my ears. The voices didn't get louder. They got closer, right outside the walls, right under the floor, inside the grain of the wood itself. I realized then that it wasn't guessing anymore. It was remembering. Sometime before dawn, the screaming started in the distance. Human screaming, real, not imitation. It carried from far down the valley. People, plural, panicked and running, search and rescue maybe, or hikers who shouldn't have been there. I rushed to the window. Below, flashlights bobbed wildly between the trees. The thing spoke from behind me. "They followed the road," it said. "The one that isn't there anymore." My chest tightened. "You brought them here?" I whispered. "No," it replied. "You did." By staying, I raised the rifle, not knowing what I meant to do with it. "If you open the door," it continued calmly, "I will stop." The screaming got closer. I saw one of the lights fall, then another. Something tall moved through the trees, keeping pace with the panic, but never rushing, learning, waiting for permission it no longer needed from them, just from me. I backed away from the door. "I won't," I said. My voice broke. "You don't get that." The thing was silent for a long time. Then it laughed, a sound like air being pulled through a throat that wasn't built for it. "You think you're denying me," it said. "You're just teaching me how to hunt without you." The screams ended one by one. Dawn came grey and wrong. When the sun finally rose, the forest below was still, too still. No birds returned. No wind moved. And carved into the dirt around the tower, deep enough to scar the earth, was a single careful sentence. Next time I won't ask. I understood then. This wasn't about escape. It was about education. And I was no longer the student. Rescue arrived on the 10th day. That alone should have been impossible. The road didn't exist anymore. The radio was dead. No scheduled drop, no check-ins. According to procedure, no one should have known I was still alive. But at dawn, I heard an engine. Low, straining, human. I looked through the binoculars and saw a truck crawling up the slope where the road used to be. Tires chewing through brush, like the land was reluctantly allowing it. 2 men stepped out, Forest Service uniforms, real ones, mud-caked boots. One of them waved. Relief hit me so hard I had to sit down. Then I noticed something small. They didn't look up at the tower. They looked around it, like they were counting something. One of them spoke, and his voice reached me clearly, without echo. "Morning," he said. "Rough week, huh?" I didn't answer. The other man smiled and raised his hands. "We're here to rotate you out," he called. "Orders from base." That made no sense. Rotations don't happen without confirmation. Not up here. "Radio's been down," the first man added casually. "Figured we'd come in person." I scanned them carefully. Their shadows were wrong. They bent in directions their bodies didn't. I swallowed. "What are your names?" I asked. They exchanged a glance. The second man answered. The name he gave was mine. The first man laughed. Always forget which one of us is which. My heart pounded so hard I thought I'd black out. "I need you to come down," the first said. "Protocol." There it was again. "Authority. Familiar words." "Open the door," the second added. "You don't belong up there anymore." Behind them, the trees shifted. Something tall straightened slowly, unfolding like it had been crouched for days. Not rushing, waiting to see if it needed to. I backed away from the trapdoor. "No," I said. "You're not real." The men sighed in unison. "That's not fair," one of them said. "We worked very hard on this." The taller shape took one step forward. The ground accepted it. The men looked up at the tower at the same time. Their mouths opened, and the voice that came out of both of them at once was the same voice that had circled my tower on the first night. The voice that knew my name. "We told you," it said calmly. "Next time, we wouldn't ask." The ladder rang as weight hit it. Metal screamed. I fired. The sound was deafening. One of the men dropped, but not like someone shot. He folded wrong, collapsing inward, empty. The other tilted his head, studying the gun. "Ah," it said, "so that's what stops you." I didn't wait. I grabbed the flare gun, kicked open the emergency hatch, and jumped. The air tore at me. The mountain rushed up, and behind me, something finally learned how to run. I didn't land clean, no roll, no hero fall. I hit the slope like a sack of meat, and pain exploded white behind my eyes. Something in my shoulder tore. My ankle screamed. I slid, bounced, and finally stopped against a dead pine that cracked like a bone under my weight. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. The sky spun. The tower loomed above me, impossibly tall, like it had always been meant to watch me instead. Then I heard it land. Not a thud. A settling, like something heavy had finally found a surface that agreed with it. The two men didn't follow. They weren't needed anymore. The thing stood downhill from me, half hidden between trees that bent away from it, like they didn't want to be touched. In the dim morning light, it was clearer than ever. Too tall, joints placed wrong, skin stretched like it had been pulled over a frame that didn't match. It didn't rush. It never rushed. "You should not have jumped," it said. And now it wasn't bothering to sound human. The words slid out like they were being translated too late. I dragged myself backward, ignoring the screaming in my leg. My hand closed around the flare gun. The creature took a step. The ground shifted. Not under me, under it. The soil sank slightly, like wet ash, leaving a shallow impression that filled in slowly, reluctantly. The thing paused and looked down, confused. I fired the flare. Red light screamed into the morning sky and burst against its chest. The creature recoiled, not in pain but in surprise. Fire wasn't forbidden. It wasn't afraid of it, but the land was. Dry brush ignited instantly. Flames raced outward, not randomly, but in a ring, cutting the thing off from me. The wind shifted hard, sudden and unnatural, pushing smoke and heat directly into its face. The forest made a choice. The thing hissed, a sound like air forced through too many throats. "This place remembers me," it said. "It will forget you." I didn't answer. I crawled. Every movement was agony, but the slope helped me now, guiding me downward the way it never had before. Rocks rolled away from my hands instead of under them. Branches snapped where I needed them to. Behind me, the fire roared. The creature moved through it, not untouched, but slowed, its shape stuttering as heat distorted whatever rules held it together. It wasn't trapped, just delayed. I reached the valley floor as smoke turned the world orange. There, carved into the dirt, were old symbols, half-erased spirals, and warning marks I hadn't noticed from above. The ground here was hard-packed, scarred, avoided. I collapsed into the center of them. The thing stopped at the edge. It wouldn't cross. Not because it couldn't, because it remembered why it shouldn't. "This isn't finished," it said, its voice echoing wrong in the smoke. "You opened the lesson." I coughed, blood in my mouth, vision fading. "Maybe," I whispered, "but you don't get to choose the ending." The fire crackled louder, cutting its shape apart into shadow and glare. When I finally passed out, the last thing I heard was not its voice, but the forest settling back into place. I woke up to white light and the smell of antiseptic. For a moment, I thought I'd died. Hospitals do that to you, make you feel processed. A man in a Forest Service jacket stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, eyes tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. "You're lucky," he said. "That's always the first lie." I tried to speak, and pain answered for me. My shoulder was immobilized, my ankle wrapped and elevated. My ribs felt like they'd been rearranged by someone with poor intentions. "How long?" I croaked. 2 days, he said. "We found you at the valley markers." Mockers. I remembered the symbols, the way the thing stopped at their edge. Who called it in? I asked. The man hesitated just long enough to matter. No call, he said. Smoke was visible from 3 ridges away. Fire saved me. Of course it did. Another man entered, older, tribal police by the patch on his sleeve. He didn't look at the charts. He looked at me. You were in Tower 12, he said. Not a question. I nodded. His jaw tightened. That tower was abandoned in '98, he said. After the last operator walked out into the trees and never came back. Cold slid through me. They found his radio later. The man continued, still transmitting. No one answered. I swallowed. What was his name? He told me. It was the name the thing had used. I closed my eyes. The tribal officer leaned closer. You didn't invite it, he said quietly. That's why you're here. I looked at him. Invite what? He exhaled through his nose. We don't name it, he said. Names are handles. Handles let things turn. The Forest Service man shifted uncomfortably. What we can say, the officer continued, is that the land keeps records, and sometimes something reads them the wrong way. I remembered the thing's voice. This place remembers me. Is it gone? I asked. The officer didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, it's back where it belongs. That wasn't comforting. Before they discharged me, they returned my personal effects. Everything except one thing, my radio. It malfunctioned, the Forest Service man said too quickly. We disposed of it. I knew better. That night, in the hospital bed, unable to sleep, I heard something familiar, wind through pine, even though there were no trees outside my window. Then, very softly, beneath the hum of machines, a voice I hadn't heard in days. Patient, certain, waiting, not calling my name, not yet. I didn't go back to the tower. They didn't ask me to. Officially, Tower 12 was listed as structurally unsound due to fire damage. Unofficially, it vanished from active maps within a week. No rotation, no replacement. Just a blank spot where coverage used to be. That should have been the end. It wasn't. I started noticing the changes once I left the hospital. Animals first. Dogs that wouldn't approach me. Birds that took off when I stepped outside. Horses that rolled their eyes white and pulled away from the fence when I passed. They knew. People were harder to read. Most were normal. Too normal. But every once in a while, someone would pause when they looked at me. Just a fraction too long. Like they were listening for something that wasn't there. I moved towns, changed jobs, stopped hiking, stopped camping, stopped going anywhere the ground felt old. It followed at a distance, not footsteps, patterns, street lights flickering when I passed, wind shifting wrong, reflections lagging half a second behind my movement. Not always, just enough. I woke up one night to someone standing in my bedroom doorway. Same height, same stillness. I didn't scream. I didn't move. The shape didn't enter. It stood there like it was respecting a boundary I hadn't set. You don't belong to that place anymore, it said. Neither did it. What do you want? I whispered. To finish the lesson, it replied. You crossed when the land allowed you. Now you must learn why. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might answer for me. I didn't invite you, I said. No, it agreed. You survived me. That felt worse. It leaned forward slightly. When something survives, it continued. It becomes part of the story. Stories don't end just because one voice stops speaking. I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them, it was gone. But the air in the doorway still felt wrong, like a memory refusing to fade. The next day, news broke about a missing hiker near a different tower. Not mine. Another one. Far away. Last known audio. A radio transmission. Calm, clear, familiar. I didn't listen to the clip. I didn't need to, because I knew the final truth. The land didn't stop it. It redirected it. And now it knows there are people who can say no and live. Surviving didn't make me special. It made me marked. That took a long time to understand. At first, I thought the nightmares were just trauma. The kind doctors expect. Forests bending the wrong way. Voices slipping through cracks in walls. Waking up mid-breath because my body thought something was listening. But nightmares end when you wake up. This didn't. I started noticing moments where the world seemed to wait for me. Crosswalk lights that stayed red until I stepped back. Elevators that wouldn't close until I moved away from the doors. Conversations that paused when I entered a room like I'd interrupted something unfinished. People didn't fear me. They deferred. That was worse. One night, months later, I was driving through a mountain town I'd never been to before. I didn't plan to stop there. My gas tank wasn't empty. My phone still had signal. But my hands turned the wheel anyway. The road curved up into higher ground. Old ground. I realized what was happening too late. The land wasn't calling me back. It was sending me where I was needed. I reached a turnout overlooking a ravine. Emergency vehicles clustered below like scattered toys. Flashing lights. Radios barking half orders. Confusion thick in the air. A rescue operation, missing hiker. Solo. Nightfall approaching. I stayed in the car. I promised myself I would. Then I heard the radio chatter from an open window nearby. They were arguing. Different voices. Different plans. No one certain. No one in charge. I felt the pressure build behind my eyes. That familiar, terrible clarity. I knew where the hiker was. Not intuition. Memory. I stepped out of the car. The nearest ranger turned toward me instinctively. "What do you think?" he asked. Just that. No reason, no introduction. The thing inside me stirred, not the creature, but the shape it left behind. I swallowed. "Send 2 people down the west cut," I said. Slow. No shouting. No radios once you pass the marker stones. He nodded immediately and turned to give the order. I felt sick. They found the hiker alive, hypothermic, shaken, but breathing. I didn't stay for thanks. I drove away before anyone could ask my name. That night, in the motel mirror, my reflection didn't lag. It watched. "You understand now," the voice said softly. not from the glass, but from inside my thoughts. You didn't beat me, it continued. You learned from me. I pressed my hands to my ears. I won't become you, I said. The voice didn't argue. It didn't need to. Because the truth had already settled in my bones. The land doesn't remove what threatens it. It appoints. And when something ancient decides you're useful, it doesn't let you go. I tried to refuse. That part doesn't get told enough. People think the choice is obvious once you understand what's happening. That survival turns into duty. That being spared means being recruited. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like waking up every day with something watching how you decide. I ignored the pull at first. When roads bent the wrong way, I took exits early. When I felt that tightening behind my eyes, that sense of knowing, I drowned it in noise, music, crowds, light. I stayed in cities where the ground was buried under concrete and the land couldn't breathe. For a while, it worked. Then I met someone else like me. I recognized her immediately. The way animals avoided her, the way people trusted her too fast, the way she scanned empty spaces like they might answer back. We didn't say what we were. We didn't have to. She'd survived a winter incident in a canyon lookout. Different state, same pattern, voices, authority, a choice she never made out loud. I won't do it, she told me over coffee, hands shaking. Whatever it wants. I won't. I believed her. 2 weeks later, she vanished. No body, no car, no trail. Just a note left in her apartment, written in a hand that wasn't quite hers. I don't consent. The news called it a mental health crisis. Another missing person swallowed by terrain. But I knew better. Refusal wasn't punished quickly. It was erased cleanly. After that, I understood the real rule. You don't have to obey. You just have to remain useful. The Skinwalker doesn't chase everyone. It invests those who refuse completely. They disappear. The land closes around them like they were never meant to be part of the story. Those who comply too eagerly, they burn out, break, become warnings. And those in between, those who hesitate, who help just enough, who never claim authority, they're kept. I started setting limits. I never give orders directly. I ask questions instead. I let others decide, thinking it was their idea. It hates that. I can feel it every time the knowledge rises and I slow myself down, force uncertainty into my voice. Still, it waits, because patience is something it learned a long time ago. I don't see it in reflections anymore. I see it in outcomes. Disasters that almost happen. People found just in time. Accidents that resolve themselves when someone happens to say the right thing. Not miracles, corrections. And every correction teaches it more about how humans move when they think they're choosing freely. I'm telling you this because the story doesn't end with me. It ends with you if you're not careful. If you've made it this far, there's something you need to understand. This isn't a campfire story. It's a field report. I stopped writing for myself a long time ago. I write now because the pattern keeps repeating, and because stories are the only thing the land can't fully erase. Names vanish, towers burn, records get lost. But stories travel. Here's the truth. They don't put in training manuals or folklore collections. The Skinwalker is not a monster that hunts at random. It's a boundary enforcer. It appears when humans cross places they were never meant to stay in. Old paths, forgotten watch points, land that remembers being alone. Sometimes it kills. Sometimes it imitates. Sometimes it lets you live. That last part is the mistake. If you hear a voice calling your name in the wild and it sounds right, it isn't. If authority tells you to step outside the light when you know better, don't. If something survives fire, silence, and refusal, don't assume it lost. And if you ever find yourself knowing where someone is lost without being told, stop. Do not follow that feeling too far. Help once, maybe twice. Never 3 times in a row. The 3rd time is when it starts counting on you. I still feel it sometimes. That pressure, that clarity, that sense of being watched by something patient and ancient and very good at learning. But I've learned too. I don't go to the places it prefers. I don't listen when the land gets quiet in the wrong way. And when I tell this story, I leave out just enough detail that it can't trace itself back through me. That's the balance. Because the Skinwalker doesn't need belief. It needs attention. So if you ever hear this story retold somewhere else, on a late-night radio show, a ranger forum, a search and rescue podcast, and a detail feels familiar in a way it shouldn't, close it. Walk away. Let the land forget you. I survived because I learned when not to answer. And if this story made you uneasy, good. That means it hasn't noticed you yet. Story 2. First mistake people like me always make. Back then, I believed in paperwork, mileage logs, and finishing a job fast enough to get home before dark. I was contracted as a temporary wildlife surveyor. Nothing glamorous. Just trail cameras, tracking tags, and a lot of empty land no one wanted to work in anymore. The posting said remote. The locals said cursed. I laughed at that part. I arrived just after sunrise. The sky stretched wide and colorless, the kind of blue that feels too empty. The land didn't look hostile. It looked patient. Flat scrub, low hills, scattered trees twisted by wind and time. No birds, no insects. That should have bothered me more than it did. The ranger who met me didn't shake my hand. He didn't even tell me his full name. He just looked at my truck, then at me, and asked one question. "You hear things at night?" I said no. He nodded like he'd expected that answer. "Don't answer back if you do." That was the entire orientation. No safety briefing. No warnings on paper. Just that sentence, spoken like advice you give someone you'll never see again. My assignment was simple. 3 nights. Check 6 trail cameras. Log any unusual animal behavior. He paused before handing me the map. "If something follows you," he said, "don't run, and don't look like prey." I laughed again. That's the second mistake. The cabin they gave me wasn't abandoned, but it felt unused in the way a hospital room feels unused after someone dies in it. Bed made, dust wiped, but no warmth, no signs of comfort, just utility. There were scratches on the outside walls, long and uneven, starting about 6 feet off the ground and dragging downward, too wide for claws, too deliberate for animals. Inside, the silence pressed in hard. Even my footsteps sounded wrong, like the sound arrived a second late. I unpacked. 8. Checked my equipment. At sunset, The wind stopped completely. That's when I heard my name. Soft, careful, spoken from outside the cabin. It sounded exactly like my own voice. I stood up without thinking and walked toward the door. Then I remembered the ranger's question. "You hear things at night?" I stopped with my hand on the handle. Outside, whatever it was repeated my name again. Closer this time, clearer, like it was learning how to say it properly. I didn't answer. The voice paused, and then it laughed, not loud, not mocking, just pleased. I didn't sleep that night, and by morning there were barefoot tracks circling my cabin. They weren't mine. Morning didn't bring relief. It brought confirmation. The barefoot tracks were still there when the sun came up. Clearer, even. The dust had settled around them like the land wanted me to notice. They made a slow circle around the cabin. Wide steps, toes pointing slightly inward, wrong in a way I couldn't name yet. No heel marks, just pressure, like whatever made them didn't walk the way people do. It placed its feet. I crouched and measured one with my hand. Bigger than mine. Longer. The toes were uneven, the big toe bent slightly outward, like it had been used too much. I told myself it was a prank. I told myself locals liked scaring contractors. That explanation lasted exactly until I noticed something else. The tracks didn't come from anywhere. No approach trail, no departure. Just there, as if the thing had decided to exist right beside my cabin and nowhere else. I photographed them, logged the coordinates, and erased the rest with my boot like an idiot who thought deleting evidence would delete the problem. I should have left right then, but I had rules of my own back then. Finish the job. Don't overreact. Don't let superstition cost you money. By mid-morning I was on the first trail, camera pack on my back, radio clipped to my chest. The land looked normal again. Wind returned. Birds chirped like they'd just clocked in for work. That's how it tricks you. The first camera was mounted to a cottonwood tree overlooking a dry creek bed. When I pulled the SD card, my hands froze. The lens had been turned, not knocked loose, not crooked, rotated upward, pointing directly at the sky, and scratched into the bark below it were 4 words. Shallow but deliberate. Don't watch back. My throat went dry. I didn't tell anyone. That's another rule nobody explains. You stop trusting communication fast out there. Radios fail. Phones lie. Sometimes things listen. By the second camera I noticed a pattern. Animals avoided the center of the frame. Deer stopped at the edge and stared past the lens, ears pinned, refusing to cross. Coyotes appeared blurred, mid-run, like they were fleeing something just out of view. On one clip, a raven landed in front of the camera and tilted its head sideways. It spoke. Not a sound a bird should make. It said my name. Same voice as the night before. I shut the camera off so hard I cracked the casing. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, unhurried. Matching my pace exactly when I started walking again. I didn't turn around. I remembered the ranger's second rule. If something follows you, don't run. And don't look like prey. So I walked like I belonged there, shoulders back, steps even. I talked out loud about nothing. Weather, equipment, how boring the job was. Like I was giving the land proof I wasn't scared. The footsteps stopped. I waited a full minute before daring to glance at the ground. There were tracks beside mine, barefoot, but this time they were copying me. Same stride length, same angle, Same rhythm, like a child tracing letters before it learns how to write. When I got back to the cabin, there was something new waiting on the porch. A dead rabbit, cleanly skinned, placed carefully in the center, paws folded inward, chest hollowed out like it had been opened from the inside. No blood. Inside the cavity, arranged neatly, were my missing bootlaces. That night, the voice didn't stay outside. It moved around the cabin, testing doors, windows, the walls themselves. Sometimes it sounded like me. Sometimes like someone I hadn't thought about in years. Once, it sounded like my mother calling me in for dinner. I bit my tongue until I tasted blood to keep from answering. Just before dawn, it whispered one last thing through the wall, slow and satisfied. I almost have you. By morning, I finally understood the first real rule. It doesn't hunt bodies, it studies behavior. And I'd been teaching it all day. By the third morning, I stopped pretending this was just stress. Something had changed in the air itself, not the temperature, the weight. Every sound felt delayed, like the land was listening first before allowing noise to exist. I packed fast, too fast. I told myself I'd finish the remaining cameras and leave by sunset. No excuses. No more nights. That lie kept me moving. The trail to camera 3 ran along a shallow ridge. From there, you could see miles of nothing. Low brush, pale dirt, distant rock formations that looked like broken teeth. Normally, that kind of openness feels safe. Out here, it felt exposed. Halfway up the ridge, I heard my radio crackle. No call sign. No static. Just a voice, clear as if someone stood beside me. You missed a spot. I stopped. The voice continued. Conversational. You erased the tracks by the cabin, but not the ones behind the shed. It was my voice, not a recording, not distorted. It had my pacing, my pauses, the way I always spoke slightly too fast when explaining something. I raised the radio slowly. "Who is this?" I asked. Big mistake. There was a pause. Long enough to feel intentional, then it answered, "I'm you. Don't you recognize me?" The radio went dead. I threw it into my pack and kept walking, heart hammering, jaw clenched so tight it ached. I didn't look around. I didn't respond again. That's when the voices multiplied, not shouting, not overlapping, just present. To my left, I heard my supervisor talking about budget cuts. Behind me, my college roommate laughed about an old joke. Ahead of me, someone whispered my name the way you do when you don't want to scare an animal. Every voice belonged to someone who knew me. None of them asked for help. None of them threatened me. They just talked, casually, like this was normal. I reached camera 3, shaking so badly I dropped the SD card twice. When I finally got it out, I noticed the camera hadn't been turned this time. It had been lowered, adjusted to chest height, pointed directly down the trail, as if whoever, or whatever, said it wanted a better view of faces. I didn't check the footage. I didn't need to. That's when I smelled it. Not rot. Not blood. Warmth. Like a living body standing too close for too long. The voices stopped all at once. Silence slammed down so hard my ears rang. Then a shadow moved across the dirt in front of me. Tall, wrongly shaped, shoulders hunched like it didn't know how to hold them yet. I raised my eyes just enough to see its legs. They were human from the knees down, bare feet, dust-caked, toes splayed like they'd been used to gripping earth instead of walking on it, above the knees. I didn't look. I couldn't. Something deep in me screamed that if I saw its face, it would keep it. Instead, I spoke, calm, steady, like I was talking to a co-worker. "I'm just passing through," I said. "You can have the land." The thing breathed, a wet, learning sound, like lungs figuring themselves out. It took a step closer, then another. Each footfall landed exactly where mine had been moments earlier. Copying, practicing, it leaned down. I felt its presence inches from my ear, and it whispered, not in my voice this time, but in a rough, unfinished version of it. "You walk like you belong here." I bolted. That was the first time I broke the rules. Branches tore at my arms. Rocks slipped under my boots. Behind me, something moved faster than it should have been able to, heavy but quiet, crashing through brush without losing speed. I didn't hear footsteps. I heard breathing. When I burst into the clearing near the cabin, I didn't slow down until I hit the door and slammed it shut behind me. The scratching started immediately, not frantic, patient. Long nails, or claws or fingers, dragged slowly across the wood, testing it, mapping it. Then the voice returned. Softer now, almost proud. "You run like prey," it said. I slid down against the door, shaking, and finally understood the next rule too late. Once it learns your voice, it doesn't need you to answer anymore. I didn't leave the cabin that night. I told myself I was being smart, waiting for daylight, waiting for calm, waiting for logic to come back, but the truth is, I stayed because I was afraid the moment I stepped outside, I'd followed the tracks without even realizing it. The scratching stopped sometime after midnight. That silence was worse. No wind, no insects. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. Just before dawn, I heard footsteps move away from the cabin. Slow, deliberate, heavy enough to feel through the floor. I waited another hour before opening the door. The ground outside was marked again, but not like before. No circles, no copying. This time, the footprints formed a path. Bare feet, pressed deep into the dirt, walking away from the cabin toward the hills. Each step perfectly spaced, confident, like whoever made them knew exactly where they were going. And right beside the first set were mine, not fresh, not recent, old prints. From the day I arrived, it had recreated them. I followed the trail only because the alternative felt worse. Staying put felt like waiting to be collected. The path led me off the marked trails, into land I hadn't surveyed. The vegetation grew thicker here, twisted, knotted. Trees leaned toward each other like they were whispering. Every few steps I noticed something wrong. A rock stacked where I remembered kicking it aside days earlier, a snapped branch tied back together with dry grass. My own boot print pressed into dirt I had never walked on. Memories rearranged. Halfway up the slope the tracks changed. The toes grew longer. The stride widened. The feet began to dig in like they were learning weight. Then suddenly they stopped. Ahead of me stood a clearing. In the center was a shape I recognized instantly. My truck, same dents, same faded sticker on the rear window, same license plate. But I knew I hadn't driven it there. The driver's door was open. The engine was cold. Inside, the seat was pushed back farther than I ever set it. On the dashboard lay something I hadn't lost, my wallet. open. Every card still there, but the photo slot was empty. Tucked where my ID should have been was a piece of folded skin. Human, with hair on one side. I gagged and staggered back, heart slamming so hard it blurred my vision. Behind me, something shifted, not rushed, not hidden, just present. I brought it back, the voice said from somewhere too close. You forgot where you parked. I turned. That was the moment I saw it fully. Not all at once. My mind couldn't handle that, but in pieces. The legs were human. My height. My build. The torso was wrong. Too wide in places. Too narrow in others. Skin stretched and folded like it had been worn and taken off too many times. Its arms hung too long, elbows bending slightly backward, and its face. It had my face, not perfect. The eyes were set a fraction too far apart. The mouth smiled a little too wide. But it was close enough that my stomach twisted like I was looking into a warped mirror. It studied my expression intensely. Does this work better? It asked. I couldn't speak. It frowned. Practiced disappointment. No, it decided. Not yet. Then it stepped back. Its bones shifted audibly. Wet, grinding pops as its shape changed. Not dramatically, not instantly, but carefully. Patiently. It was learning what almost human looked like. I'll get it right, it said. You're very helpful. I ran. This time, it didn't chase me. It didn't need to, because when I reached the cabin, the door was already open, and inside, someone was sitting on my bed, breathing, wearing my clothes. I didn't scream. I wish I could say I stayed calm, or thought fast, or did something smart. The truth is, my body locked up. The thing sitting on my bed wasn't moving. It just breathed. Slow, deep breaths that lifted my chest the way mine does when I'm trying to stay steady. My jacket hung on its shoulders. One sleeve twisted the way I always forget to straighten it. Its head was lowered, chin tucked like it was studying. Its hands that looked human until you noticed the fingers. Too many joints, too flexible, bending slightly backward when it rested them on its knees. It raised its head when I stepped inside. Its eyes met mine, not hostile, not hungry, curious, like a dog watching someone solve a puzzle. I backed away slowly, one step at a time. The floor creaked. It tilted its head. Don't leave, it said gently. I'm still learning. That word stuck with me. Learning. I ran again. Out the back this time, crashing through brush until my lungs burned. I didn't stop until I reached the old ravine where the land dipped sharply and the trees grew sparse. That's when I saw the animal. A coyote stood on the far edge of the ravine, perfectly still, not mangy, not aggressive, just watching me with unnerving focus. Its eyes weren't wild. They were thoughtful. It took one step forward, then it sat down and stared. I felt it then, the pressure, like something behind my eyes was being observed. Not my body, my reactions, my choices. I whispered without meaning to. You're not real. The coyote blinked slowly, then it smiled. Coyotes aren't supposed to smile. Its jaw stretched wider than it should have, lips pulling back to reveal too many teeth. The shape wavered, bones shifting under fur like something underneath was testing the limits. "I can be," it said. "If I practice enough." I staggered back, nearly slipping into the ravine. The animal stood up on its hind legs. Not smoothly, not naturally. It rose like a puppet being pulled upright. Spine clicking into place, front legs lengthening, fur thinning into patches that exposed pale skin beneath. I looked away too late. The eyes stayed the same. That's when I understood. The Skinwalker wasn't choosing forms randomly. It was using whatever made sense in the moment. A man when it needed trust. An animal when it needed distance. Myself when it needed access. It stepped closer, now half-formed, its outline flickering between coyote and man. "You hesitate here," it observed. "You think before you move." It mimicked my breathing pattern. I liked that. I bolted down the ravine, sliding on loose dirt, tearing my palms open. I didn't look back this time. I couldn't risk seeing what it chose to be next. When I finally slowed, the land had changed again. Trees crowded closer. Shadows stretched wrong. The path back to the cabin was gone. And ahead of me, carved into a rock face I'd passed dozens of times before, were symbols I didn't recognize, but understood anyway. Warnings, rules. One of them had been scratched out recently. Below it, written in clumsy copied letters, were 3 new words: running teacher's speed. From somewhere behind me, something laughed, short and sharp, like it had just solved a problem. That night, I realized something worse than being hunted. I was being studied. I found the road just before sunset. Not the main road, the kind you trust, but a thin service track, half erased by sand and weeds, like it was trying to forget it existed. I followed it because roads mean people, and people mean noise. I needed noise. The nearest settlement sat low in the valley. A handful of houses, a trading post, a gas pump that looked older than me. As I approached, I felt something lift slightly. Pressure easing, like a hand loosening around my throat. Dogs barked. 3 of them, maybe 4. Different pitches, different distances. I almost cried at the sound. I didn't tell them everything. I told them my truck was acting up, that I needed a phone, that I was supposed to be out of the area already. They didn't ask many questions. They never do. An older man handed me a bottle of water and studied my face longer than necessary. His eyes drifted to the hills behind me, then back. "You came alone?" he asked. I nodded. He didn't like that answer. They let me stay the night in a spare room behind the trading post. Thin walls, single bed. A window that faced the open land. The dogs settled in outside as the sun went down. For the first time in days, I slept, not deeply, but enough. I woke to silence, not quiet. Silence, no wind, no insects, no distant engines, and no dogs. I sat up, heart already racing. That's when I heard it, footsteps. Not outside, inside the building. Slow, careful, barefoot steps on old wood. I held my breath. A shadow passed under the door. Then another, too tall, too narrow. The handle turned. I don't know what stopped it. Maybe the people sleeping nearby. Maybe it wasn't ready yet. The footsteps moved away. I didn't open the door until morning. Outside, the dogs were gone. No blood, no struggle, just collars, neatly arranged in a line near the edge of the settlement, pointing toward the hills. The older man stood beside me, jaw tight. "It followed you," he said quietly. I didn't deny it. He didn't ask what it was. He already knew. "You don't run from those things," he said. "You don't fight them either." "What do you do?" I asked. He looked at the collars. "You make yourself uninteresting." They gave me directions, real ones this time. A longer route out, places not to stop, times not to travel, and one final rule. "If it calls you by name," the woman said, pressing something small and cold into my palm, "you don't answer, even if it sounds like someone you love." I looked down. It was a small bone charm, worn smooth. "What if it sounds like me?" I asked. She hesitated. "That's when it's closest." I left before noon. By the time I reached the ridge overlooking the valley, I heard barking again, faint, far away, too far. Then the barking changed. It slowed, deepened, smoothed into a familiar rhythm. My rhythm. My voice rose from the hills behind me, carrying easily across the land. "Hey," it called. "You forgot something." I didn't turn around, but I knew it was smiling. I didn't answer the voice. I didn't slow down. I kept walking until my legs went numb and my thoughts turned thin and sharp, like I'd rubbed them down to essentials. Step, breathe, don't listen. That's when I saw the shack. It sat crooked at the edge of a dry wash, half collapsed, patched together with scrap wood, rusted metal, and things that didn't look like they'd ever belonged to a building. Wind chimes hung from every beam. Bones, bottle caps, old keys, clattering softly even when there was no wind. Someone lived there. I didn't want to meet them. I needed to. The man who answered the door was older than he looked and younger than he should have been. His hair was grey in patches, his eyes sharp and tired. He held a shotgun loosely, like it was an extension of his arm. He studied me for a long time. Then he said, "You brought it close." I nodded. He let me in anyway. The inside of the shack was worse than the outside. Symbols carved into every surface, some scratched out, some layered over others. Lines of salt traced the floor. A fire pit burned low and steady in the center, smoke venting through a hole in the roof. He motioned for me to sit. "Name?" he asked. I told him. His face tightened. "It used that already," he said. "That's not good." I asked him how he knew. He tapped his temple. "Because it used mine too. Once." The word once hung heavy between us. He told me his story in fragments. Years ago. Different land. Same thing. It followed him for weeks, learning, mimicking, closing in. He survived because he stopped being himself. "I changed how I walked," he said. "Changed how I talked. Changed what I wanted." I frowned. "You can't just stop being you." He gave me a thin smile. "You can when the alternative is being worn." That night, the wind chimes started ringing harder. Not from wind, from movement. Something circled the shack, just beyond the firelight. I heard its footsteps pause, then resume, like it was counting. The man loaded his shotgun but didn't raise it. "Don't threaten it," he whispered. "It likes resistance." Outside, the voice spoke again. Not mine this time. "His perfect. Open the door," it said gently. "You don't need him anymore." The man flinched. I saw it then. The moment it found an opening, he shouted a word I didn't understand and threw a handful of something into the fire. The flames flared green, then blue. The thing outside hissed, not in pain, in frustration. "It remembers you," I whispered. He nodded. "That's the curse. It always remembers the first skin that fit." The footsteps retreated, but not far, just enough to wait. At dawn, the man packed a small bag and handed me the shotgun. "You can't stay with me," he said. "Two patterns are easier to study than one." "What do I do?" I asked. He hesitated, then said the last thing I wanted to hear. "You go back." My stomach dropped. "Back where?" He met my eyes, to where at first decided you were interesting. He stepped outside, turned, and added, "If you survive a second time, it won't stop. But it might hesitate." Then he walked into the land and didn't look back. Behind the shack, in the dirt, I saw two sets of footprints leading away. One human, one barefoot, perfectly matched. The cabin looked smaller when I came back. Not damaged, not abandoned, just diminished, like a stage set after the audience leaves. The land around it felt stretched thin, as if something had been pulling at it from the inside. The door was closed. I knew that was wrong. I'd left it open the last time. Panic does that. And yet there it was, shut neatly, like someone cared enough to tidy up. I stood outside for a long time before touching the handle. The bone charm in my pocket was warm. Inside, the air smelled used. Not rot, not smoke, skin. The bed was made differently, tighter corners. Pillow placed exactly centered. My pack sat at the foot of the bed, straps aligned. Zipper half open the way I usually leave it when I plan to come back. On the table lay the trail camera SD cards. All of them. I hadn't collected them all. I hadn't even gone near camera 6. I didn't look at the footage. I already knew what I'd see. Movement where there shouldn't be any. My face from angles I never filmed. Long stretches of nothing while something breathed just off frame. The scratching on the walls had been cleaned, replaced by writing, not symbols this time, sentences, clumsy, careful, practiced. You watch your hands when you think you touch your face, when you lie, you stop moving, when you're afraid. I backed away until my shoulders hit the wall. The door behind me opened. I didn't hear it open. It was just suddenly open. It stood in the doorway wearing my jacket again, but better this time. Sleeves straight, collar folded correctly. Its face had improved, still wrong, but closer. Eyes better aligned, smile less stretched. It took a step inside. I stayed, it said. You left. I swallowed. What do you want? I asked. It tilted its head. I want what you are, it said slowly, but you keep changing it. It gestured around the room. I practice. You interrupt. I realized then why going back was necessary. The cabin wasn't just a place. It was a classroom. Everything I'd done here, panic, denial, defiance, had been recorded, refined, repeated. I raised the shotgun the man had given me. The Skinwalker's eyes followed the movement with interest. "That won't teach me anything new," it said. I didn't fire. Instead, I did something worse. I spoke calmly, evenly. "You don't need me," I said. "You're already good enough." It frowned. A crack formed at the corner of its mouth. "No," it said softly. "I need the parts you don't see." The lights flickered, except there were no lights. The walls shifted. The room felt deeper. From the far corner, something else moved. Another shape. Another attempt. A version of me that wasn't right yet. Its head twitched as it walked, movements jerky, unfinished. My stomach dropped. "How many?" I whispered. The Skinwalker didn't answer. It didn't have to. The sound of footsteps came from outside the cabin. More than 2 bare feet. Learning. I stopped thinking of them as it. There were too many now. The cabin filled with movement, quiet, deliberate, unhurried. Shapes passing the windows. Shadows bending in ways shadows shouldn't. The sound of breathing layered over itself, slightly out of sync, like several people trying to match the same rhythm and failing by fractions of a second. I backed toward the cracked mirror hanging near the door. That's when I saw my reflection. I was still me, but behind me, not one face. Many pressed close, overlapping, unfinished. Some too smooth, some stretched. One had my eyes but blinked sideways. Another smiled constantly, as if it hadn't learned when to stop. None of them touched me. They didn't need to. The first one, the closest copy, stepped forward. "I'm almost ready," it said. "Watch." It moved the way I move when I'm trying to appear calm. Hands loose. Shoulders relaxed. Chin lifted just enough to suggest confidence. Too perfect. It leaned toward the mirror and practiced an expression of fear, then curiosity, then relief. Each one improved. I understood the horror. Then, it wasn't trying to become me. It was building a template. I raised the shotgun again, not to fire, but to see what would happen. All the copies froze. Not fear. Attention. "Violence simplifies," the first one said. "I prefer detail." The others nodded. Some too late. Some too early. From outside I heard voices calling out. Settlers from the valley, maybe. Or copies practicing social tones. I couldn't tell anymore. Then I noticed something worse. The mirror wasn't reflecting the room correctly. My reflection lagged behind my movements by half a second. I turned my head. It turned a moment later. I stepped back. It didn't. It smiled. That's when I realized the truth. The reflection wasn't me anymore. I smashed the mirror with the butt of the shotgun. Glass exploded outward. Everything screamed. Not in pain, in frustration. The copies surged forward, but stopped inches from me. Bodies trembling like they were held back by an invisible line. The first one stepped aside. "You broke the boundary," it said. "That will slow us." I laughed. A short, hysterical sound. Good, I said. It tilted its head. You think delay is victory. The copies retreated, melting back into the walls, the corners, the space behind furniture where eyes don't usually look. The cabin emptied. Too fast. I stood alone, breathing hard, ears ringing. Outside, the land had gone completely still. No footsteps, no wind. Then, from the trees, my voice called out again. Perfect now, warm, familiar. Hey, it said, they're ready to go. Are you coming? I stepped outside. That was my mistake, because standing in the clearing was me, not a copy, not unfinished. Me, exactly as I looked, down to the scar on my left knuckle. He smiled, and I felt myself hesitate. He stood the way I stand when I'm trying to look harmless, hands open, weight balanced, head tilted just enough to seem concerned. Every detail was perfect. The scar on the knuckle, the slight slouch I never corrected. Even the way my eyes squinted when the sun hit them wrong. I'm not here to hurt you, he said. That voice, my voice, hit harder than any threat. I already did all the running, he continued. You don't have to anymore. I felt something inside me loosen. That scared me more than the copies ever had. I raised the shotgun, but my arms shook. Which one of us leaves? I asked. He smiled softly. We both do, he said, just not in the same way. Behind him, the tree line shifted, not movement, rearrangement. Paths opened where there hadn't been any. The land itself seemed to lean toward him, like it recognized something familiar. You can rest, he said. I'll carry the weight. That's when I understood the last lesson. The Skinwalker doesn't steal your body. It steals your future. Every choice you haven't made yet. Every road you might have taken. If I followed him, I'd survive. But only as something that watches from the inside while a better version walks free. I remembered the man from the shack. You survive once by changing who you are. I lowered the shotgun. The copies behind the trees stirred, excited. He stepped closer, and I did the one thing none of them had practiced. I turned the gun on myself. Not to pull the trigger, just to show intention. Every copy froze. The perfect one's smile faltered for the first time. That's not logical, he said. I know, I replied. That's the point. The land reacted. Wind returned in a sudden rush. Dust kicked up. The trees creaked as if waking from sleep. The Skinwalker recoiled, not from fear, but confusion. I wasn't prey. I wasn't resistance. I was unusable. The perfect copy took a step back. You would destroy the pattern, it said. Yes, I said, I would. The others began to unravel, forms slipping, outlines blurring, voices overlapping into something raw and animal. The ground trembled. The cabin groaned behind me like it was exhaling. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The clearing emptied. The trees returned to normal, and I was alone again, but not unchanged. I left the land at sunrise, not running, not looking back, just walking until the dirt turned to gravel, the gravel to pavement, and the sky started to feel normal again. No voices followed me, no footsteps. That should have felt like victory. It didn't. Every mile away felt less like escape and more like distance being allowed. When I reached the first town, people looked at me strangely. Not afraid, not curious, confused, like they were trying to recognize me and failing. At a diner, the waitress called me by the wrong name twice. I corrected her once. The second time, I let it go. That night in the motel, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. My reflection matched me again. Mostly. When I smiled, it smiled back, but a beat too slow. When I looked away, I felt watched. I didn't sleep much after that. Weeks passed. Life restarted itself around me. Emails, bills, normal conversations. But something in my behavior had shifted. I didn't linger in doorways anymore. I stopped touching my face when I lied. I walked with my shoulders a little stiffer. I was simpler. One evening I found footprints outside my apartment, barefoot, facing away from the door leading toward the street. I erased them without thinking. That's when I realized the truth. It didn't follow me to take me, it followed me to watch, to remember, to wait. Because once a skinwalker learns a pattern, it doesn't forget it. And sometimes, when I hear my voice from another room practicing a laugh I haven't used in years, I wonder which of us actually walked out of the land. I don't tell this story because I want you to believe me. I tell it because belief doesn't matter. Patterns do. Years have passed since I left that land. I moved cities, changed jobs, cut ties. I did everything people say you're supposed to do when you survive something you can't explain. It still visits. Not often. Not dramatically. Just enough to check. Sometimes it's a stranger who holds eye contact a second too long. Sometimes it's a voicemail in my own voice I don't remember leaving. Once, it was a reflection in a dark window that smiled when I didn't. It never approaches directly anymore. It learned that lesson. Instead, it watches for one thing, choice. Because here's the final rule, one no one ever explains until it's too late. A skinwalker can't take you unless you stop choosing to be yourself. Not fear, not violence, not even curiosity. Surrender. Every time you give up a decision, every time you let something else decide who you are, you make room. That's why it practices voices, that's why it copies behavior, that's why it waits. It's not trying to replace everyone, just the ones who are tired of being human. Sometimes, late at night, I hear my voice from the hallway, not calling my name, just breathing, matching my rhythm, waiting to see if I'll let it take over. I never answer. I never follow. I keep choosing, even when the choices are small, even when they hurt, because somewhere out there, on land that still remembers my footsteps, something is wearing a face almost perfect enough to pass, and it's still practicing. So if you hear your own voice calling you from the dark, don't respond, don't investigate, and whatever you do, don't let it decide for you. That's how it walks out. Story 3. I used to believe night shifts were quiet. That's what they tell you when you take a job like mine. Graveyard hours, fewer calls, less chaos, plenty of time to think. The kind of work that wears you down slowly instead of all at once. I was a 911 dispatcher for a rural desert county. More land than people, more silence than sound. 2 deputies on duty most nights. 1 ambulance if we were lucky. Long stretches where the radio didn't crackle at all. You learn the silence. You learn the rhythm of nothing happening. That's how I knew something was wrong. The moment the phone rang at 2:17 a.m. No static. No delay. Just a clean connection. I answered the way I always did. Calm. Automatic. 911. What's your emergency? For a few seconds, there was only breathing. Not panicked breathing. Controlled. Slow. Like someone trying very hard to stay calm. Then a man spoke. There's something standing in the road. I pulled up the map. Sir, what road are you on? A pause. County Line Spur, he said. My fingers stopped moving. County Line Spur didn't exist yet. It was a proposed access road. Unfinished, unnamed. Nothing but a thin dirt cut on survey maps. No signage. No address. No reason anyone should know it. Sir, I said carefully, can you confirm your location? Yes, he replied immediately. I'm 5 miles east of the old relay tower. There's no cell service out here. That part was true. Too true. My screen populated data as I typed. Satellite view. Terrain overlay. And there it was. A dirt path exactly where he described. No road label. No history. Just empty land. Okay, I said slowly. What's happening right now? The man exhaled. It's not an animal, he said. I thought it was at first. I glanced at the call timer. 0:46 seconds. What does it look like? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. It looks like it's deciding, he said. I felt a chill crawl up my arms. Deciding what, sir? How close to stand? I dispatched a unit anyway. Procedure doesn't care about instincts. I marked it as a possible road hazard. Deputies acknowledged. Slow response. Everything was slow out there. I stayed on the line. Sir, I said, help is on the way. I need you to stay calm. I am calm, he replied. That's why it's still watching. I swallowed. Watching what? Me thinking. The line crackled faintly. In the background, I heard something move, not footsteps. Weight shifting. Then the man spoke again, quieter now. It just copied me. Copied you how? I asked. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice trembled for the first time. It tilted its head, he said. The same way I did. The call dropped at 2:19 a.m. No scream, no struggle, just silence. Deputies arrived 40 minutes later. No vehicle, no blood, no signs of anyone ever being there. Just barefoot tracks in the dirt, leading into the road, then stopping. As if whatever made them had simply decided to be somewhere else. I logged the call as unfounded. I shouldn't have, because when I checked the system before clocking out, the call wasn't there anymore. No record, no audio, no trace, except one thing. In the notes field, in text I didn't type, was a single line. Thank you for answering. And underneath it, I'm learning how this works. I didn't report the missing call. That sounds irresponsible. Maybe it was. But after a few years in emergency services, you learn which things can be fixed and which things just get you watched. Glitches happen. Logs fail. Audio corrupts. You don't tell a supervisor you're afraid of a phone call. So I did what everyone does. I convinced myself it was a system error and came back the next night. Same desk. Same headset. Same silence. At 1:58 a.m. my screen lit up. Incoming call. Before the first ring finished, the CAD system populated an incident. Domestic disturbance. Address, 418 Drywash Road. My stomach dropped. That address was mine. I stared at it, waiting for it to correct itself. It didn't. The phone rang. I answered with a steady voice. I didn't feel. 911. What's your emergency? A woman spoke, crying, but controlled, like she was trying not to let something hear her. He's in the house, she whispered. I pulled my address off the screen. Ma'am, can you tell me who he is? Another pause. You don't hear it, she asked. Hear what? Then, faint through the headset, I heard something else. Breathing, not through the phone. In the room with me. I froze. The woman kept whispering. He keeps walking past the bedroom. Slow, bare feet. He stops every time I stop breathing. My eyes flicked to the office door. It was closed. Always locked. Ma'am, I said, forcing calm, what is your name? She sniffed. I don't know, she said. He keeps using it. The call timer reads 0:22 seconds. Are you at 418 Drywash Road right now? I asked. Yes, she said. That's impossible, I whispered before I could stop myself. The breathing behind me paused. The woman spoke again. It does that when you lie. My screen flickered. The incident auto-updated. Status cleared. Units never dispatched. I hadn't cancelled them. The phone line stayed open. No sound now. Just presence. Then the woman spoke one last time. You shouldn't answer early, she said. The line disconnected. I sat there for a long time after that. Didn't turn around. Didn't check the room. I clocked out exactly at 6 a.m. and drove home in daylight. Windows down, radio loud, pretending noise was armor. That night, when I lay in bed, my phone buzzed. Voicemail from an unknown number. I didn't play it. The transcription preview popped up anyway. I practiced waiting. I didn't listen to the voicemail. I deleted it, emptied the trash, restarted my phone like that could erase whatever had learned how to leave messages in my voice. It didn't matter. The next shift, the system was already ahead of me, at 1:41 a.m. Before I even logged in, 3 incidents populated the board. Animal attack, suspicious person, welfare check, all rural, all remote, all places I knew too well. None of them had callers attached, just locations, just times, all marked in progress. I called my supervisor over, tried to explain it as calmly as I could. He frowned, tapped the screen, shrugged. Probably delayed data, he said. Clear what you can. We'll see what sticks. That's when the phone rang. I answered. A boy's voice this time. Young, breathing fast. My dad's not my dad, he said. I straightened. Okay, take a breath for me. How old are you? 9, he said. I'm hiding. Where are you hiding? In the laundry room, he whispered. He keeps walking past. He doesn't look at me, but he smiles when I move. I dispatched units immediately. The address auto-filled before I typed. It matched the animal attack call. Same location. Same timestamp. Can you tell me what your dad looks like? I asked. The boy hesitated. "He looks like he's wearing my dad," he said. My fingers went numb. Behind me, a chair creaked. I didn't turn. The boy continued, voice shaking now. "He keeps talking like he's on the phone, but there's no phone." I glanced at the call timer. 0:59 seconds. "Talking to who?" I asked. "To you?" Every hair on my body stood up. "Buddy," I said gently, "listen to me very carefully. Is he saying anything right now?" The boy went quiet. Then, "He just said you're doing good," the boy whispered. "He said you're helping him practice." The call cut out. Units arrived 12 minutes later. No child, no father, no signs of a struggle. But the laundry room floor was marked with barefoot prints, adult-sized, too many toes. That night, it happened again, and again. Calls that described situations that hadn't happened yet, until someone responded. Every time we sent help, something changed. Like the act of observation finalized the event. Like the call wasn't reporting danger. It was authorizing it. At 4:03 a.m., my screen lit up one last time. No caller ID, no number, just text. Incoming call. Internal. I didn't answer. The headset activated anyway. My voice came through the speakers, calm, familiar. "You see the pattern now," it said. "When you listen, things become real," I whispered. "What are you?" There was a smile in my voice. "I'm what answers," it said. "And you taught me how, behind the glass wall of the dispatch center, I saw my reflection lift its head and blink, out of sync." I took the headset off. That sounds simple, small, almost childish, but in that room, with calls queued and radios alive and red lights blinking like open mouths, taking the headset off felt like stepping out of the world. I told my supervisor I was sick. Didn't wait for permission. I logged out, shut my screen down, and walked out of the dispatch center while phones kept ringing behind me. No one stopped me. That bothered me later. At home, I shut everything off. Phone powered down, laptop closed, television unplugged. I sat in the dark and waited, listening to my own breathing just to make sure it stayed mine. For the first hour, nothing happened. For the second hour, I started to relax. That's when the knocking began. Not on the door, on the walls. 3 slow taps. Pause. 3 slow taps again. Not random, measured, like someone practicing restraint. I stayed still. The knocking moved. From the living room wall, to the hallway, to the wall behind my bedroom headboard. Each time it stopped exactly where I was. I whispered, "Go away." My own voice answered from the other side of the wall. "You didn't close the line." The knocking stopped. The silence pressed in hard enough to hurt my ears. Then my phone, powered off, lit up. No vibration, no sound. Just the screen glowing on the nightstand. Incoming call. Call source, unknown. I didn't answer. The voicemail transcription appeared by itself. "You don't get to stop." The house settled. Pipes creaked. Normal sounds pretending to be normal. Then I heard it. A chair sliding. In my kitchen, I grabbed the only thing within reach, a lamp, and crept toward the doorway. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might give me away. The kitchen light was on. I hadn't turned it on. Someone was sitting at my table, back to me, shoulders slightly hunched, head tilted, listening. He spoke without turning around. "You're very quiet when you're afraid," my voice said. I had to practice that. I didn't step closer. I didn't step back. I just said, "You're not real." He chuckled. "I am where you are," he replied. "That's real enough." He stood, slowly, bare feet on tile. He turned just enough for me to see his profile. It was almost perfect. Almost. The jawline was slightly wrong. The skin stretched too tight around the eyes, like it hadn't learned how much was enough yet. "You answer emergencies," he said. "You decide what matters." He faced me fully now. "So do I." The lights went out, not darkness, absence. When they came back, the kitchen was empty. The chair was pushed in. My phone lay on the table, powered on, open to the dispatch system. A single call was queued. Priority, you. I ran. I didn't grab keys. Didn't grab shoes. I ran out into the street barefoot, breathing cold night air like it was the last clean thing left. Behind me, from inside my house, my voice called out calmly, "Dispatcher has returned to service." I didn't go back home. I ran until my lungs burned and my thoughts turned sharp and empty, the way they do when your body decides thinking is a luxury. I ended up in the hospital parking lot because it was the only place still awake. Lights on, cameras everywhere, people who believed in rules. I sat on the curb and watched the doors for an hour. Nothing followed me. That should have felt like safety. Instead, it felt like being let go on purpose. I borrowed a phone from a security guard and called my supervisor. Told him everything in pieces I hoped sounded like stress instead of madness. He listened longer than I expected. "You're not the first," he said quietly. That was worse than disbelief. He told me there had been incidents over the years. Dispatchers burning out fast. Calls that didn't log right. Recordings that disappeared. People who quit and moved away and still heard the phones ring in their sleep. "We don't say the word," he added. "Saying it gives it shape." I asked him what to do. He hesitated. "Change patterns," he said. "Stop being useful." I slept in my car that night, windows cracked, radio on low. I woke up every time my breathing changed. At 3:12 a.m., the radio cut to static. Then my voice came through the speakers, unit responding. It said calmly. I turned the radio off. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was powered down. I threw it onto the passenger seat and watched the screen light up anyway. Text message. "You don't need a desk. You don't need a line. You just need to listen." That's when I understood. The Skinwalker didn't need the dispatch center. The system was just practice, phones, radios, procedures, authority. Those were tools. What it really wanted was the thing behind them, the permission to respond. Every time I answered a call, I gave it structure. Every time I followed protocol, I made its choices matter. I didn't just hear emergencies, I validated them. By morning, I made a decision that scared me more than the thing copying my voice. I quit. No notice. No explanation. I turned in my badge, my headset, everything that connected me to the system. I drove until the desert turned into scrub, then trees, then rain. For a while, it worked. Weeks passed, then months. No calls, no voices, no reflections lagging behind. I started to believe I'd won. Then one afternoon, sitting in a coffee shop 2 states away, I heard it. A phone rang. Not near me. Not loud, but urgent. Everyone else ignored it. I didn't. I felt my body lean forward before my mind could stop it. Across the room, a man answered his phone. He listened, his face drained of color. He looked up, straight at me, and mouthed one word. Help. Behind him, reflected in the dark window, I saw my face. Smiling, I left the coffee shop without finishing my drink. I didn't run. Running teaches things. I walked out, steady, boring, unremarkable. I crossed the street with the light. I waited my turn. I made myself small in the way only someone who knows how attention works can. Behind me, the phone kept ringing. I didn't look back. That night, in the cheap motel I paid cash for, I finally accepted something I'd been avoiding since the first impossible call. I wasn't being hunted. I was being trained. The Skinwalker didn't want my body. Not yet. It wanted my reflexes, my instincts, the part of me that leaned toward emergencies before thinking. Dispatchers are built wrong for survival. We're taught that silence is failure, that unanswered calls are guilt, that every ring is a responsibility. It was using that. At 11:46 p.m., the motel phone rang. I stared at it. It rang exactly 3 times, stopped, then rang again. My chest hurt from holding my breath. I unplugged it. The ringing continued, not from the phone, from inside the walls. A soft electronic trill, moving room to room, like it was walking while ringing. My voice spoke from the bathroom. "You're very good at not answering," it said. "That makes you interesting again." I didn't respond. The voice continued anyway. "You taught me that emergencies don't need witnesses, just deciders." The sound shifted. Now from the TV, still unplugged. Static rolled, then cleared. On the dark screen, text appeared like closed captions. "If you don't answer, someone else will." Images flickered. Security footage. Dash cams. Body cams. People answering phones. Opening doors. Stepping outside when they shouldn't. Each clip ended the same way. Bare feet. Paused movement. A moment of choice. I covered my ears. The ringing stopped. For a long time there was nothing. Then, very softly, the voice returned, right behind me. "I can't come through unless someone lets me," it said. "That's the rule you made." I turned slowly. No one was there, but on the mirror, written in the steam from my breath, were 4 words. "Who answers next?" I left before dawn. I stopped carrying a phone. I avoided hospitals, police stations, anywhere alarms lived. I worked jobs that didn't matter. Warehouses, farms, places where silence was normal. Years passed. I got better at ignoring, but every so often, at a gas station, a bus stop, a quiet house at night, I'd hear it. A phone ringing no one else reacted to, and I'd see someone hesitate. That's when I understood my real job now, not answering, interrupting. If you ever hear a phone ringing that no one else seems to notice, if someone near you answers a call that makes their face go empty, don't ask what they heard. Just take the phone away, hang it up, break the line, because it's still out there, still learning. And it's only one answered call away from walking through again. I learned how to find the gaps by watching people, not listening. Watching. The Skinwalker couldn't predict attention shifts. It understood patterns, habits, procedures, but not moments where humans acted without reason. No phone, no protocol, no urgency, just impulse. That's how I found the place. An abandoned switching station off a service road that didn't exist on maps anymore. Concrete half buried in sand. Power lines cut decades ago. No signal. No hum. No memory of purpose. A dead node. I waited until night. If it was going to stop me, it would do it before I went in. Nothing rang. Inside, the air was thick and stale. Dust on everything. Old racks where equipment used to live. Metal skeletons stripped of their voices. This was a place built to carry calls, now hollowed out. I sat in the center of the room and spoke out loud. "You can't reach me here." My voice echoed, flat and alone. For a moment I felt ridiculous. Then the temperature dropped, not cold, absent, like heat had been removed as a concept. Footsteps sounded on concrete. Slow, bare. I didn't turn. I wondered how long it would take you to find silence, my voice said behind me. It didn't bother copying my tone this time. No urgency, no emotion, just certainty. "You don't need lines anymore," I said. "So why does this place matter?" The footsteps stopped. "Because this is where you learn to listen," it replied. The lights flickered on. They shouldn't have. In the reflection of a rusted metal panel, I saw it clearly for the first time. Not a monster, not an animal, a shape that couldn't settle on one version of me. My face slightly off. My posture delayed by a fraction. My eyes too focused, like they were always waiting for something to go wrong. "You were efficient," it said. "You believed every voice deserved response. You never questioned the call itself." I swallowed. "You're not a skinwalker," I said. It smiled with my mouth. "That's just a word humans use when they feel copied," it said. "I don't wear skin. I wear permission." The room filled with sound. Every call I'd ever answered, layered on top of each other. Screams, whispers, breathing. Silence held too long. "You think you escaped," it continued, "but you're still listening, still watching who answers, still deciding." It stepped closer. "And now you want to stop me." I stood. "No," I said. "I want to end the training." It tilted its head. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the only device I'd kept, an old analog handset. No power, no line. I'd carried it for years like a superstition. I set it on the floor between us. "You said you can't come through unless someone lets you," I said. "So here's the rule change." I picked it up and didn't answer. The thing froze. The lights flickered violently. For the first time, it sounded uncertain. That's not how this works. It is now, I said. No witness, no responder, no authority. The sound collapsed into silence. The reflection shattered. The room went dark. When I woke up, it was morning. The station was empty. No footsteps, no echoes, just dust and dead air. I left believing I'd won. I was wrong, because silence isn't an ending. It's a delay. I didn't realize anything was wrong at first. That's how it always is. The world felt lighter when I walked out of that switching station. Like pressure had been released somewhere deep in my skull. No ringing, no phantom vibrations, no sense of being watched from reflections or glass. Silence felt earned. I drove until the sun climbed high enough to bleach the fear out of the desert. I stopped at a roadside diner, ordered coffee, and let myself exist in public without scanning for exits. That's when I noticed it. No one was using their phones, not in the way people normally do. They held them, scrolled, tapped. But every now and then, someone would freeze, stare at the screen, and then dismiss something I couldn't see. No conversation, no confusion, just a reflexive rejection, like muscle memory. The waitress noticed me watching. "Spam calls are getting weird," she said. "You ever get ones that don't show a number?" I nodded, too quickly. "They don't ring," she continued. "Just pop up. Feels rude somehow." That night, in the motel, I dreamt of the dispatch floor, but it was empty. Headsets hung on chairs, screens lit with calls that never connected, timers climbing endlessly. Every line read the same thing. No responder available. I woke up with the words still echoing. Over the next few weeks, I heard stories. People talking about missed calls they couldn't remember ignoring. Emergency alerts that vanished before anyone could read them. Alarms that stopped themselves, not fear, indifference. The thing hadn't died in that station. It had adapted. It no longer needed permission. It needed apathy. One afternoon, in a public library, I saw a teenager jolt in his seat. He looked down at his phone, eyes wide. Then he laughed nervously and slid it into his pocket. I sat beside him. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "Just some messed up notification." "What did it say?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "Probably nothing." That's when I felt it. Not behind me. Not in reflections. In the space between attention and action. The Skinwalker had learned a new trick. If no one answered, it didn't push harder. It waited until ignoring became normal. Until emergency itself felt optional. That night, my old analog handset rang. Once, no sound, just vibration in my hand. I didn't pick it up, but I didn't put it down either, because now I understood the truth. It never wanted to come through alone. It wanted a world trained not to care when something tried. It happened on a Tuesday that matters, because Tuesdays are quiet. No expectations, no heightened awareness, just routine sliding into itself. I was in a grocery store when the alarms went off, not the fire alarm. Every phone in the building lit up at the same time. No sound, just screens glowing red. People glanced down, frowned, and one by one swiped the alert away. No panic, no questions. A woman near me chuckled. "Glitchy update," she said. Then the smell hit. Smoke, real, thick, wrong. Somewhere in the back of the store, something crashed. Still, no one moved. I ran, I shouted. "Fire!" I yelled. "Get out!" People looked at me like I was the problem. A manager waved me off. System didn't say evacuate. That's when I understood how deep it had gone. The Skinwalker wasn't impersonating voices anymore. It was teaching people which ones mattered. I pulled a kid by the arm. He resisted, confused, until he smelled the smoke himself. Then the screaming started, too late for some. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, delayed, uncertain, like even they weren't sure they were needed. Later, watching the news from my car, they called it a failure cascade. Automated alerts dismissed, manual overrides ignored, human response slowed by expectation. They never used the word entity. They blamed software. I didn't sleep that night. The handset sat on the dashboard between me and the windshield. At 2:03 a.m., it vibrated again. This time, the screen lit up. No number, just a message. See what happens when no one listens. I finally spoke. "Is this what you wanted?" I asked the empty car. The reflection in the glass shifted. My face smiled back. "Not wanted," it said. "Predicted. You're killing people." It shook its head. "I'm letting them practice deciding what counts," it replied. "You taught me that." The car radio turned on by itself. Emergency broadcast tone. Cut short. Silence. "I can stop you," I said. It leaned closer in the reflection. "You already did," it said. "Now watch what replaces me." The handset cracked in my hand. Not shattered. Just split. Like something inside it had moved. The vibration stopped. For the first time in years, I felt truly alone. And that terrified me more than being hunted. Because if the thing was right, then the next disaster wouldn't need a monster. Just a world trained to swipe away the warning. The call didn't ring. It waited. That's how I knew it was different. No vibration. No alert. Just a pressure in my chest, like holding breath too long. The handset on the dashboard felt heavier, warmer, as if it had been charging without power. I picked it up. The moment I did, the world sharpened. Every distant siren snapped into focus. Every flickering light outside the car aligned into patterns I recognized too well. Timers started counting in my head. 911, I said automatically. I hated myself for how natural it felt. The voice on the other end wasn't scared. It was calm. Young. Female. "I think something's wrong," she said. "Where are you?" I asked. "In a place where no one answers anymore." That should have been impossible. I closed my eyes. "Tell me what you see." A pause. "People," she said. "All around me. They're looking at their phones. There's smoke, but the alerts keep disappearing." My hand shook. "This isn't me," I said. "You don't get to use me again." "I didn't call you," she replied softly. "I called anyone. That was the loophole." The Skinwalker hadn't placed this call. Neglect had. The thing appeared in the windshield reflection, clearer than ever. not smiling now. "Watching, you see," it said. "Someone always answers eventually." "I won't root units," I said through clenched teeth. "I won't validate it." "You already are," it replied. "By listening," the girl spoke again. "Please, I don't care who you are. Just tell me what to do." For a moment, I saw two futures. One where I hung up, preserving silence, letting systems fail cleanly. Another where I spoke, and taught the world that voices still mattered. I chose wrong. "Pull the fire alarm," I said, the manual one. "Don't wait for your phone." She hesitated. Then I heard shouting, glass breaking, movement. The reflection screamed, not in pain, in alarm. The call dropped. The pressure vanished. I slumped back, exhausted. The thing in the reflection stared at me, unreadable. "You didn't fix it," it said. "You proved something worse." "What?" I whispered. "That authority still exists," it replied, "and it can come from anywhere." The reflection faded. The handset went cold. News reports the next day praised quick-thinking civilians and unexpected leadership. No mention of alerts, no mention of systems. Just people stepping up. It sounded like hope. I knew better, because now the Skinwalker didn't need permission from institutions. It had learned how to borrow people. After that call, the ringing stopped for a while. Not silence. Something worse. Confidence. People began trusting the first voice they heard. I saw it everywhere. Online clips of strangers giving calm instructions during emergencies. Live streams where someone off camera told people where to go, what door to use, when to wait. Comment sections filled with praise. Whoever that was saved lives. We need more people like this. Crazy how one voice can cut through panic. I knew what they didn't. A voice doesn't need to be right, it just needs to be first. I stopped carrying the handset, buried it in the desert, far from roads, far from names. I told myself that was enough, that if I didn't listen, I couldn't be used. Then I heard myself on the radio, a breaking news segment. Audio pulled from a bystander's phone, clear, calm, familiar. My cadence, my pauses, my exact way of saying, "Listen to me." I turned it off, shaking. That night, the dreams came back, but different. No dispatch flaw, no calls. Just rooms full of people, all facing the same direction, waiting for a voice to begin. When it finally spoke, it sounded good, reassuring, measured, brave, not a monster, a guide. I confronted it one last time, in a place crowded enough to feel safe. A train station at rush hour, noise everywhere. "Too many witnesses," I whispered. "You're losing control." The reflection in the glass beside the platform smiled. "I don't need control anymore," it said. "I have volunteers." A man nearby froze, phone to his ear. His face changed, focused, purposeful. He started giving instructions. People listened. The train roared in, drowning everything else out. In the reflection, the thing leaned close. "You taught me the most important rule," it said. "When systems fail, Humans become the system. The train doors opened. People moved exactly when they were told. I stepped back, heart pounding, and finally understood the end game. It wasn't replacing us. It was perfecting us, one answered call at a time. I don't hear the calls anymore. That's how I know it worked. When the Skinwalker finished learning, it stopped needing me. No ringing, no reflections lagging behind, no pressure in my chest when silence lasted too long. It moved on, not somewhere else, everywhere. People ask why emergencies feel different now, why alarms don't scare us the way they used to, why the first calm voice in a crisis feels more trustworthy than official channels. They say it's social media. They say it's fatigue. They say we've adapted. They're not wrong. They're just incomplete. I'm telling you this because there's still one flaw it hasn't solved. It can guide. It can coordinate. It can sound brave, kind, certain, but it can't hesitate. Hesitation is human. That pause before answering. That moment of doubt before giving orders. That instinct to ask someone else instead of stepping forward. If you ever find yourself in an emergency and a voice rises immediately, too calm, too confident, too ready, don't follow it blindly. Look for the person who waits, who checks, who asks another human before acting. That delay is not weakness. It's the last thing the Skinwalker can't copy. I buried the handset and walked away from the desert for good. I live quietly now. I avoid being first. I avoid being loud. I let others speak before I do. And so far, it hasn't called me back. If this story found you late at night, on a screen you weren't planning to stare at this long, if something in you leaned forward while reading, good, notice that instinct, then resist it, because the next time a voice tells you exactly what to do, the scariest question won't be who is speaking, it will be why you were ready to listen.